We're in Mark chapter 4. So if you haven't been here before or you're just kind of starting to track with us, that's where we'll be for a bit. We'll take a little bit of a break during the summer in our Psalms series that we have over the summer. But today we're in Mark 4. And I want to remind you, if you have questions about Christianity, about Jesus in general, you want to ask those questions anonymously, please feel free to send them to the address on the screen. And I'll take 5 to 7 minutes after the sermon. And those questions do not have to be, was the sermon awesome or super awesome? Those questions could be things like, I do not understand that, or I don't agree with this, or help me understand that. And I'm glad to try and answer those as well. So we're in Mark chapter 4, and I just want to start by saying, when people talk about the deep things, they often say something along the lines of, what's the meaning of life? What is the meaning of something? What is the purpose of my life? And we often think about that philosophically, right? We kind of think about it in a detached way, but I want us to think about it in a very practical way. The meaning of life, or the heaviness of it, or the measure of it, as we'll hear in a moment, it's like the ball and tether connected to the pole. It's like the anchor connected to the ship. It's the thing that holds everything in place. And so when we're talking about something like this morning that holds the center, it's really not just a philosophical question. A friend of mine, I think of my friend who believes just enough in Jesus to believe that he exists, but not enough in Jesus to believe that he cares about what he does with his Sunday mornings. And the reason that it matters is that you have to wonder, the gods who aren't worthy of our full measure, our full care, if they are not the heart of all meaning, are they really worth following? Can we really trust them? Can we really rely on them? And so what Jesus says here in the text is, it's challenging, but it's also a little bit scary, because here's what he says. He says, if you attempt to take Jesus casually, if you attempt to estimate Jesus lowly, you will have none of him. I hope you enjoy your bagels this morning. If you attempt to take Jesus casually, if you take him lowly, you'll have none of him. It's a hard saying. Last week we heard the parable of the 4 soils, and it was a way that we either receive the word of Jesus into our heart or not. And now we're given another way to understand Jesus' word, by our measurement of its importance. How important is it? We play a little game sometimes when we come to church, where we have a little bit of a separation of our everyday life and our church life, and we think, well, this is important, and I'm going to give it some importance, but not that much importance. And instead, what we see in the text this morning, and the reason why it's so challenging, is because Jesus is going to insist that he must be the full measure of things. He has to be the full measure of meaning, all of meaning. He has to be the full measure of holiness. He has to be what holiness is at its heart. And if those things are true, then it also means that Jesus is the full measure of our humanity. He is the full measure of what it means for us to be human beings. Whew, that is everything. That's the meaning of things. Let's explore it through Mark chapter 4, starting in verse 21. And he said to them, is a lamp brought in to be put under a basket or under a bed, and not on a stand? For nothing is hidden except to be made manifest, nor is anything secret except to come to light. If anyone has ears to hear, let him hear. And he said to them, pay attention to what you hear. Pay attention, take heed. With what measure you use, it will be measured to you, and more will be added to you. For to the one who has, more will be given. From the one who has not, even what he has will be taken away. So Jesus, he starts by saying, if you want to know meaning, if you want to know what it is, he is the full measure of it. Verses 21 through 23, this lamp has come, and it's very important. It's not someone brought a lamp. It is the lamp itself has come. Very clear here that the lamp is Jesus. The lamp has come, and the lamp has made its place on the lampstand. Now, I think that we often imagine that all the people listening to Jesus are coming to him saying, you know what? I don't know what's important in life. I have no commitments. I just want to know what Jesus has to say, right? Rather, I think every person listening to Jesus already has a lamp. They already have something, and they have agreed that this is the thing. And so when they come to Jesus, and Jesus is talking about being the lamp, there is a conflict there that we have to understand. That for Jesus to say he is the lamp, he's not just saying, hey, make sure you got a lamp of some kind, right? He's not saying, hey, if the storms come, make sure you can shine a light. He's saying, I am the lamp, and he's also saying implicitly, therefore, your lamp is not the lamp. It's a challenge. One of the difficult parts of Jesus' teaching is also that he places himself on the lampstand. We don't put him there. We don't make something to be light. He makes it to be light. It's hard to improve on C.S. Lewis's statement. Many of you probably know it or have heard of it. I think it's helpful. I believe in Christianity as I believe that the sun is risen, not only because I see it, but because by it I see everything else. Jesus is the one by whom the hidden things are made manifest. And by the way, it's not just the religious things. We think that often, well, of course, Jesus makes Christianity plain, but Jesus is making all things clear. There's this appeal to centrality in Christianity that's a little disturbing. So we might think, well, look, if Jesus is the center of human living, if he's the meaning of things, then it kind of diminishes us. We like to think that we are in the center of things, that we are the kind of, we're the ones who decide. We're the deciders. But I think it's helpful for us to be skeptical for a moment about our ability to be the center of things, all right? If you're alive in the world, you have experienced the reality of shifting kind of meaning markets. In other words, the things that mattered last week suddenly don't matter the next week. Last week you had to be an expert on tariffs or economics. The next week you're an expert in the education system. The next week you're an expert in how to raise kids. This week, because it's Mother's Day, you're an expert in being a mother, right? And unfortunately, what happens is that you're constantly judged by those markets as they shift. What's important was important, you invest in it, and then something else is important. And when we're the center of things, the challenge is we don't know if those essentials are still going to be essential the next day. So we chase after them. And they elude us. They run away. The problem is that if Jesus is not at the center of things, if he is not the full measure of meaning, the full measure, if he's not, then something else, some other aspect of the market becomes important. And we make really bad trades. Things that we thought mattered. We trade other things away for them. If you know the biblical story of Jacob and Esau, there's that great moment where we wonder about Esau's sense of money and stuff and value. If you know the story, he gives up his birthright, he gives up the blessing for a stew. And when you read that, you wonder, how is it possible that he does this? And I think there's an interesting clue in the fact that 3 world religions share Jacob and Esau: Judaism, Islam, and Christianity. Now, in Islam, Jacob and Esau, they never have this conflict. And the reason is because Jacob is a great prophet, and great prophets don't steal from someone else, right? Of course not. In Judaism, it has the theft, right? We know that. It's in the Torah. But the problem is the rabbis all talk about it as if, well, Esau kind of deserved it. So Jacob takes the blessing, and it's no big deal because he was kind of a dunce, right? Only Christianity seems to understand the issue here. Only Christianity understands this, that there is something that would make Jacob give up his integrity and trade it for the blessing. There is something that would make Esau give up the blessing and trade it, a bad trade, for food. And the answer is that because at the heart of who these people are is a lamp that is not the proper lamp. And so part of what we need to hear as we gather around the Word today, part of what we need to hear as we gather around the Word today, is is that if Christ is not the center of meaning, we will involve ourselves in poor trades. That the heart of who we are must be impacted this way. It has to be changed. As a matter of fact, what Jesus is saying is that there's meaning so powerful, so dense, so important that it actually holds things together. Jesus can occupy the center of life. So he is the full measure of meaning, but it goes on to show us how that meaning is so powerful. And here's where we really start to run into a challenging part of the text. Verses 24 and 25, I said this in the first service, I'll say it again. This is not your bumper sticker verse, typically, right? And many of us don't know what bumper stickers are, and that's fine. Some of you still have them, and I think that's charming. But let me read it. Verses 24 and 25, he said to them, pay attention. The measure you use, it'll be measured to you. Still more will be added. 25, the one who has, more will be given. From the one who has not, even that will be taken away. What is Jesus doing? The lamp of Christ illuminates meaning. But what Jesus is telling us is that the lampstand is necessary, and the lampstand is separated to some degree from us in order to shine. There must be an otherness to Jesus. The light that he gives must be compelling, and it cannot be managed and manipulated by you or me. The lampstand has to stand in such a way that it can critique us, it can challenge us, it can tell us how we don't measure up. The full measure of holiness, of otherness, is Jesus. He is the lamp because we're not him. Now, it may seem odd to hear Jesus say, look, from the one who has, more will be given. From the one who doesn't have much, that'll be taken away. And that only makes sense if we don't understand how the Bible uses those ideas. Because you may be a person who says, I thought Jesus was the one who takes from, the one who's abundant and gives to the one who doesn't have much. I thought he takes the haughty and he brings them low. And the answer is yes, he does. And that's exactly how the text is working. Because what it's saying is that in this case, the one who has little is the one who thinks he is abundant. And so he makes little of Jesus because he thinks he has everything he needs. The stuff of life. The children who rise and call them blessed, right? Like many of you heard this morning from your children, right? They have what they need, so they don't need Jesus. They can make little of him. And the way that this is consistent biblically is that is the arrogant person. The one who makes little of Jesus is haughty about his life. And the one who has much of Jesus is the one who is humble about his life and sees the relative beauty of Christ. So what this means is that even in this example, just like others, those who are haughty will be brought low. Those who are humble will receive even more. Jesus' point is to say, this is what happens as we regard God. So the Bible's critique is that there is this arrogance that needs to be dealt with in us if Jesus is going to be the lamp, all right? So hold on to that. There's an arrogance that has to be dealt with in us. If you think that you have Jesus right where you want him, loving all the things that you love, taking care of all the things that you want him to take care of, then what you do is you make him like all the other acquisitions of an abundant life, all right? If you have Jesus right where you want him, if you can manage his light, if he's not holy, but he's like all the other tools that you employ, you casually care about him, you lose him. You'll find him under the bed, you'll find him in the junk drawer, but you won't find him on a lampstand. And here's the problem with that. As we take Jesus casually and we say, even as we tell our kids, look, we should go to church on occasion, and you bring your kids and the whole thing, but your kids learn, just as you've learned to some degree, that Jesus, he's not ultimate importance, but maybe he's like next to the most important thing. So you treat him a little casually, and here's what happens. The other things in life start demanding that they're the most important thing. And now it's not that you said Jesus is unimportant, but you've allowed other things to become the lamp. And once that happens, once you have taught yourself, your kids, that Jesus is only really important, but not most important, they will find something else of greater importance to stand in his place. They will. Jesus must be holy, or we will find another lamp that we can call holy. Human beings are naturally religious. And if you chase the wrong light, it will crush you. Think about the great American novel, The Great Gatsby. There's the light across the way. Those of you who know it, the green light, Daisy's light hanging out there to pursue, right? And Gatsby wants Daisy. The light says, you get this, you have everything. The ultimate light. And it crushes Gatsby. Sorry to ruin it, spoiler. It's like 100 years old, it's fine. He's crushed. He's crushed. F. Scott Fitzgerald records this amazing line. He says, Gatsby believed in the green light. The future that year by year recedes before us. It eluded us then. But no matter, we will run faster, stretch out our arms farther. When the lamp is not Jesus, when you give some other thing holiness in your life, you will chase after it and it will crush you. That's why Jesus has such strong words for us and why he's trying to drive us to see his holiness, that he must be on the lampstand. How do we see that Jesus is different? Well, I'll tell you this. His holiness is seen in that he brings his own lampstand. He brings his own thing that his light can sit on and be the most important light. Now, if we thought about it, how are we going to make much of Jesus? We would have all kinds of ideas. Let's put him on K2. He'll be shining everywhere. Let's put him in the White House. If we can put him in the center of power, he'll change everything. Jesus chooses none of those places. He chooses a low place. He chooses a humiliatingly low place as his lampstand. He shows up with his own lamp. He is the lamp. He brings his own lampstand. And he shows us what it means for a light to shine. The Apostle Paul in Galatians 6, he puts it this way. Far be it from me to boast, except in the cross of our Lord Jesus Christ, by which the world has been crucified to me and I to the world. What Paul was saying was the world and all its charms and all that it can offer cannot touch. It cannot be holy the way that Christ is holy. Therefore, it is crucified to me. And in like mind, I am crucified to it. There is an enmity there that will always exist because the world will constantly say, I want to be your lamp. And Jesus will say, it's not enough. It's not enough. Jesus is not fully the light until he is on the lampstand of the cross. One of my favorite writers talked about working by candlelight. She said that a moth came to the candle and got stuck in the wax, and the moth became like a wick. It became its own wick. Jesus is the lamp by his own oil. He burns by the power of his love for you that is so good that it deserves first place and so powerful that it can hold all things together. How does he do that? We make more of Jesus. And when we do that, we make more of his death. And as we make more of his death, we make more of his love for us. How could he die except that he loves us? And the more that we make of his love for us, the more we make of Jesus again. The more humble, the more lowly, the more Jesus' love seems unfathomable. The more his light shines and rises. The more his holiness sets him apart. And you say, there's nothing like this. I have to see it. It has to have first place. The more unapproachable the light seems, the more beautiful it becomes. The full measure. Jesus is the full measure, not just of meaning, but of holiness. He tells us what is, and he tells us that we're not him. And once that happens, friends, once that has become understandable to us, there's a third thing that happens, a full measure, the full measure of our humanity, what it means to be human beings. Now, I'm going to apply this in a really simple way. I'm going to say that the application of Jesus' parable is seen by our way of life. Now, here's an example. What holds the center for you, mothers, on Mother's Day? What's the full measure? Does Christ hold the center? Or do the expectations of what it means to be a mom crush you? Because you may not be the mom you want to be today, but gosh, tomorrow we can stretch out and go faster and further. If Jesus is the measure of our humanity, it frees us from unhelpful and unhealthy visions of humanity. It means that we get to look to him, not to what Hallmark says ought to be true of us in brush script. That we look and we say, this is what's true. Jesus is what's true. We take the full measure of Christ and we learn that we can sustainably live in this world where we're constantly measuring ourselves. Mothers, let me encourage you with one thing this morning. The best gift that you can give to your children will not be that you made every game, cooked every meal, comforted every hurt. It will be that when your children saw you and said, I rise and call you blessed, that what they saw was not you, but Jesus reflected in you. Show them Jesus. Do not sentence your daughters, your sons, to simply try to measure up to you. May they see Christ and follow him. So listen, let's go to work this morning. I have a Muslim acquaintance, and he's devout the way that many of us are devout, which is to say, he knows he's not devout enough. And when we were talking about this, I asked him, what does Allah think of your lack of devotion? And he said, I wouldn't dare to ask that question. I wouldn't dare to ask what Allah thinks about anything. He's closed off to me. His thoughts are his thoughts. I can't know what he thinks or what he believes or what he feels. In contrast, Jesus is constantly revealing himself. He's saying, I am what's true. Jesus fills up the law, and he shows us what it means to be a human being. And part of that makes me wonder just this question. If we have such an advantage from Jesus showing us who he is and what it means to be human, why are we making such a poor use of it? If Jesus is saying, by my truth, you will know your falseness. By my compassion, you'll know your lack of compassion. By my love and generosity, you'll know your lack of those things. If we have Jesus who shows himself more than any other God, why do we make such poor use of it? Colossians 1 puts it this way. Jesus, he is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of all creation. By him all things were created in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones, dominions, rulers, or authorities. All things were created through him and for him. He is before all things. And in him all things hold together. In him all things hold together. What an incredible promise. In him the center holds. Right? He's the head of the body, the church. He's the beginning, the firstborn from the dead, that in him everything he might be preeminent. For in him all the fullness of God was pleased to dwell, through him to reconcile to himself all things, whether on earth or in heaven, making peace by the blood of what? Of his cross. The full measure of what it means to be human. has been revealed. When Jesus said what's hidden is going to be revealed, he has shown us what it is to be human. So I'm going to apply it this way for us this morning. Our ethical choices need to be more connected to the person of Christ as the lamp of our lives. So I just want to encourage you to think about it in these terms, all right? I want you to think about it in these terms. Am I willing to hold this decision, this story that I just told, this way of interacting with my friend, this tax return? Am I willing to hold those things up to the lamp that is Christ and to see them for what they truly are? Am I willing to do that? Or am I in the corner? Am I on the periphery? Am I saying, Jesus, maybe you can see part of me, but not the ethics that I'm embarrassed about? Can I bring my locker room talk into the room where Jesus is the lamp? Can I bring my whole self, all of its frailty? There's an immutable law of physics, my friends, and it goes something like this. If you can see the light can see you. If Jesus is the light, that light must illuminate us. Show us for who we truly are. His place as the lamp must do that. If we give the full measure of faith to Jesus, we have to start by exposing who we are to that light. Now, does that seem too difficult? It might very well. It's scary. And so I want to encourage you with one last thing this morning. Can Jesus bear the center of things? He can. A sort of miracle happened this week in sermon prep. On Thursdays, I'm basically trying to pull the threads together. Monday through Thursday, I get to think about all kinds of interesting things. I may send you a text about something I'm finding in the Bible, and it's I'm super excited and I'm talking about it. And then Thursday, it's okay, now let's pay attention, all right? You got to bring it together, James. You got to land the plane, right? Some of you are like, yeah, yes, you do. This week, this Thursday, I'm sitting here, I'm looking at my whiteboard, I'm pulling the threads together. I'm like, there's just something here. I'm trying to fit these pieces, and I'm listening to a piece of music that one of you hates, and that's okay. I'm listening to a piece of music. It's Wagner, and it's Das Rheingold. Now, this already sounds like a pretentious sermon illustration, okay? So let me tell you that the reason I'm listening to Das Rheingold is because I remembered it from an old Levi's commercial, and I really liked the tune, so I put it on my playlist, all right? Lest you think too highly of your pastor. I'm listening, and at first it just really doesn't make any difference to me. It doesn't challenge me. It starts out with a very low melody. It's played by the tuba. And Wagner, who is a rabid anti-Semite and incredibly proud of himself, renamed the tubas in his pieces the Wagner tuba. That tells you who he was, right? So you've got this tuba playing this low melody. It's just barely there. And as it rises, you start to recognize, as I'm listening, I start to recognize that the brass, the woodwinds, the strings, they start moving around this melody as it rises. They start moving around. I mean, they're playing with it. The woodwinds are playing. The flutes are doing a funny thing. The strings are doing amazing things. It's moving all around the central line as it slowly rises and builds and rises and builds. And as it does that, all of the instruments around it are doing their thing. It's this incredible picture of what it means for one thing to lift so many other things all at once. It is so powerful and beautiful. And then it ends. The instruments were making much of the Wagner tuba. They were taking the full measure of it. Your ability to be faithful, your ability to follow Jesus, for the most important thing to be the most important thing, for the meaning of life to make sense, is to revolve around, play around, learn from, dig into, delight in the central theme, which is Jesus Christ. And that as you do that, and you go where he goes, he will raise you up. As you make more of Jesus, you'll follow him where he leads. Not because you are able, but because he is. May he be for you the full measure of what it means to be human.